3 weeks after I sold my farm for $10.5 million, I called my family and told them I had lost everything. I said the sale had failed. I said the bank was taking the land. I said I was ruined. By the next morning, my father was not calling to ask if I was safe. He was calling to ask for my grandmother's land. And before that week was over, my sister said words to me I will hear for the rest of my life. My name is Nora Bennett. I am 41 years old. And this is the story of how one lie showed me the truth about my whole family. If you know what it feels like to be loved only when you are useful, stay with me. Like, subscribe, and tell me your town and what time it is where you are. I always wonder who is out there listening in the dark. Welcome back to the Hidden Family Revenge Stories, where women who were pushed too far stop begging to be treated right and start telling the truth. If you have ever been treated like a wallet instead of a daughter, you belong here. Now let me take you back to a Tuesday in March, the morning that should have been the happiest day of my life. The fog sat low over the lavender rose like it was thinking about staying. I had been awake since 4. I walked the long way to the gate, past the flower beds, past the old red barn, and stopped where my grandmother's hand-painted sign hung a little crooked. Bennett Hollow. The green paint had faded soft with time. My grandmother, Evelyn, had painted it herself. I had built almost everything else with my own hands. 19 years earlier, when I was 22, I planted my first lavender row with a shovel, sore hands, and a bank loan I never should have been given. That morning, my husband came to the gate carrying coffee, the same way he always did during big weeks. His name is Ethan. He is the kind of man people overlook because he is quiet. He spent 30 years working with estates and trusts. He reads tiny lines on paper the way other men read road signs. And he reads people the same way. He handed me the cup and said, "Big day." He was right. I had a buyer. A land conservancy wanted the whole farm. They wanted it kept working forever, just as it was. They were paying $10.5 million for that promise. My family knew I was selling. They did not know the number. And lately, they had been far too interested. There was something else too. Something older. Something quieter. Something tied to my grandmother and 60 acres of land I drove past every morning without really thinking about it. That part comes later. That morning there was only fog, coffee, and a stack of papers waiting in town. Ethan watched me stare at the sign. Then he said, "After you sign, I want to try something before you tell your family." I laughed. He did not. The closing took 20 minutes. A notary. A pen. A stack of pages thick enough to feel like a brick. When it was done, the director from the conservancy shook my hand and told me the lavender fields would outlive both of us. I believed her. I drove home, and Ethan followed behind me in his truck. The money was real now. It was sitting in an account under my name, the kind of number I used to dream about on nights when the water pump broke and I could not afford to fix it. That evening, we sat at the kitchen table. I reached for the phone to call my mother. Ethan placed his hand flat on the table. "Not on me. On the table." "Tell them you're broke," he said. I blinked at him. "What?" "Tell them the sale fell apart. Tell them the bank is taking the farm. Tell them you have nothing." I stared at him. Why would I do that? He took his time. He always does. "For 15 years, he said, I've watched your family call when they need something and disappear when they don't. I have never been able to prove it to you because you always paid before the bill could land." I started to argue, but he lifted one finger, gentle and calm. "Tell them the sale is gone. Then we sit back and watch what they do with a daughter who can't help them anymore." I had known Ethan 16 years. He had never asked me to do anything cruel. He had never asked me to test my own blood. I looked at the dark window above the sink. Beyond it, I could just make out the shape of the gate post. "If you're wrong," I said, "I'm going to feel terrible." He nodded once. If I'm wrong, you can take them to dinner and say sorry. Then he paused. I won't be wrong. Before I tell you what happened next, you need to know my family the way I knew them before that week. My father, Henry Bennett, was 66. He had run a feed and seed store for years and lost too much money helping other people chase dreams. My mother, Diane, was 63. She kept the books and kept the peace, always in that order. My younger sister, Lila, was 4 years younger than me. She married a man named Grant Keller, a man with a neat smile, a firm handshake, and no spine when things got hard. 2 years earlier, Lila and Grant opened a wedding venue in an old dairy barn across the county. In photos, it looked perfect. String lights. White paint. Sunset fields. In real life, it was bleeding money. To buy the equipment, the tents, the kitchen gear, the generators, they took out a big loan. My father co-signed it. I knew that the way you feel cold air under a door before you see where it's coming from. Then there was the hollow. 60 acres. Creek water. Oaks. An old hay barn. My grandmother Evelyn had refused to sell it to developers her whole life. When she died, she did not leave it as a pile to be split. She put it into an irrevocable trust. One line mattered more than all the rest. The land was to be kept, not sold. She named me trustee. Lila and I were both beneficiaries, but the power to protect it was mine because Grandma said I was the only one who would still be standing when the offers came. For 9 years, I had paid the taxes on that land without telling anyone. The way I had paid for many things. Grandma used to stand at the gate with coffee in her hand and say, "People who come around only when they need the land, child, are not coming around for you." That night, I called my mother first. I told her the sale had collapsed at the last minute. I said the funding had failed. I said the bank was calling the note and I was going to lose the farm. I said it plain. I did not cry, because I wasn't sad, and because I have never been good at pretending feelings I do not have. There was a pause on the line. A little too long. Then my mother said, "Oh. Oh, Nora." Then, almost right away, "Have you told your father?" "Not yet," I said. "I'll tell him," she said, and her voice had already moved into planning mode. Then I called Lila. She picked up on the second ring, which she never did. I told her the same story. Her silence was shorter. Busy. Like someone doing math in her head. "So it's gone?" she asked. "All of it?" "It looks that way," I said. Then she said, "And the hollow?" I sat very still. I had not mentioned the hollow. Across from me, Ethan had not moved. "What about the hollow?" I asked. She made a tiny sound, the kind you make when you say too much too fast. "No reason," she said. "I'm just worried about you." We hung up. The kitchen went quiet. Outside, the gate post stood black against the night. Ethan finally asked, "How long do you think before your father calls about the land?" I did not answer. I did not have to. My father called at 7 the next morning. Not to ask where I would sleep. Not to ask if Ethan and I were all right. He cleared his throat and said, "Your mother told me." Terrible thing. Then almost in the same breath, "Listen, given your situation, the family's been talking. We think the smart thing is for you to step down as trustee. Let us sell the hollow before creditors come sniffing around." I felt every word hit the room. Step down. Let us sell. Creditors. This had been practiced. Maybe by him. Maybe by someone else. Then I heard another voice in the background. Sharp. Fast. A second later, Lila took the phone. She didn't soften it. "Be honest with yourself, Nora," she said. "You lost your own land. You don't get to keep ours." I pulled the phone away from my ear and stared at it. Then I brought it back. "Grandma's land isn't ours," I said. "It's hers. It still is. There was shuffling on the other end. My mother. My father. My sister. All in one room I was not in, deciding what my life should become before breakfast. The phone rang 2 more times after I hung up. I turned it face down. Ethan looked at me. He had been right, and being right did not make him happy. There it is, he said softly. Now we know. That same morning, I drove into town to see Martin Cole, the lawyer who had written my grandmother's trust. He was old now, with tired eyes and an office that smelled like paper and cold coffee. I told him everything. The real sale. The lie. My father's call. My sister's words. He did not look shocked. He looked tired. Like a man who had seen this kind of story too many times. Let me say this slowly, he said, folding his hands. The hollow does not belong to you. It does not belong to Lila. It belongs to the trust. You both have an interest in it, yes. But neither of you owns a deed. That means no one can force a sale like this. There is nothing to divide. I asked the question that was burning in my throat. What if they say I'm bankrupt? What if they say I can't be trustee? He almost smiled. Being broke is not a crime, he said. And it is not a breach of duty. To remove you, they would have to prove you mishandled the trust, stole from it, wasted it. They can't prove that, because you did none of it. He leaned back. And your personal creditors, real or imagined, cannot touch trust land. That is exactly why your grandmother set it up this way. The relief I felt was not warm. It was cold and clear. Then let them come, I said. Let them show me their whole hand. That afternoon, my mother called again. Her voice had changed. The planning was gone. Now there was honey in it. Sweetheart, we're only trying to protect the family, she said. You don't want people dragging your grandmother's name through the mud. What creditors? I asked. What creditors are coming after 60 acres of trees and hay? She had no answer, so she moved the way she always moved when truth got close. Your father isn't sleeping, she whispered. And right then, under all that softness, I heard something real. Fear. He co-signed the loan for Lila's venue, she said. If that place goes under, the bank comes for him. For us. For the house. There it was. Not said cleanly. But standing in the room all the same. I felt the old pull in my chest. The old need to fix it. To write the check. To stop everyone's fear so they could breathe again. I had spent my whole life being the person who breathed last. Mom, I said gently, I hear that you're scared. She started crying. Some of it was real, and that was the hardest part. My mother was not a monster. She was a scared woman who had learned long ago that I would carry whatever she placed in my arms. Then help us, she said. You always help us. I closed my eyes. My hand still smelled like lavender. Just think about your father, she whispered. Then she hung up before I could answer. They called a family meeting for Thursday night at my parents' house. I went because you learn more in a room than you ever do on a phone. The old place smelled like my whole childhood. Coffee. Wood smoke. Old floors. For 1 second I almost forgot why I was there. Then Grant slid a manila folder across the kitchen table toward me. We had this drawn up to make things easy, he said. Inside was a packet. A paper for me to resign as trustee. A quitclaim deed. A document allowing the sale of the trust land. Grant was not a lawyer. Somebody had helped him, or he had downloaded it from somewhere in a hurry. My father would not look at me. Lila stood by the stove with her arms crossed. My mother kept filling cups that were already full. It just makes sense, Grant said. You step aside. The land sells. Dad's loan gets paid. Everybody is made whole again. We're trying to save you from yourself. I picked up the folder. I did not argue. Arguing tells people where your fence is. I'll look it over, I said. Grant let out a breath. The sooner the better, he said. For who? I asked. Then I walked out before anyone answered. A small county does not keep secrets. It only hides them for a little while. By Friday, I knew more than they wanted me to know. The loan for the venue was in default. Missed payments. Then another. The fall bookings had crashed. The bank had sent the kind of letter that means they are done waiting. My father's name was on that loan under Grant's. If the venue failed, it would not stop there. It would reach all the way to my parents' house. That was the fear in my mother's voice. That was the speech my father had practiced. The hollow was never about Grandma. It was the only piece of land worth enough money and already paid off. They needed it turned into cash fast. I sat in my truck outside the feed store and let the truth settle. There is a special kind of heartbreak in proving the thing you hoped was not true. I called Ethan. It's the loan, I said. They're not trying to save me. They're trying to save themselves. He was quiet a moment. Then they've told you exactly who comes first, he said. Now you decide if you're still on that list. Lila moved faster than I did. By the weekend, the story had spread across the whole valley. Nora overreached and lost the farm. Nora is buried in debt. Nora is hanging on to Grandma's land while her own father is about to lose his house. At the gas station, a woman I had known since church squeezed my arm and said she was praying for my family. The way she said family did not include me. At the co-op, two men who had bought lavender from me for years stopped talking when I walked in. Lila had done what she always did best. She got to the audience first. And that is the cruel thing about staying calm. People mistake your silence for guilt. I understood her plan. If the town believed I was desperate and selfish, then when I refused to sign, I would be the villain, and they would be the family trying to do the hard, loving thing. It was smart. I almost admired it. That evening, I drove out to the hollow alone. I stood at the gate under Grandma's sign and remembered her there with her coffee cup, telling me land remembers who walks it. She taught me how to cut lavender. How to study a face. How to tell what a person really is by what they do when they think no one needs them. Standing there in the dark, I understood something. I was not fighting for 60 acres. I was fighting to be the woman my grandmother believed I was. Sunday night, they tried again. My mother cooked pot roast and the good rolls, the meal she made when she wanted something badly. Halfway through dinner, Grant pulled out the folder again and placed it beside my plate with a pen on top. We've already got a buyer interested, he said. Developer from the city. These things move fast. I opened the packet slowly this time. Right in front of all of them. And that is when I saw it. The quitclaim deed already had a date typed in for 2 days later. There was a notary line filled in with the name of a woman who worked at Grant's bank. They had not brought me a proposal. They had brought me a closing. They thought if they moved fast enough, I would sign before I thought. My father saw me notice the date. He looked away. I set the pen down. Not hard. Just down. I don't sign things I haven't read twice, I said. And now I've read this twice. Lila's jaw locked. Thank you for dinner, Mom, I said, standing up. The rolls were perfect. I left. The next public move came at the fall harvest blessing at the Grange Hall, the biggest room in our little world. My mother mentioned it on the phone like it was nothing. Lila is going to say a few words about the family's plans for the hollow, she said. People are excited. I knew exactly what that meant. They were going to announce a plan for Grandma's land in front of the whole valley and make me look like the bitter, broke daughter standing in the way. If they got the room on their side, the pressure would not be private anymore. It would be public. Ethan found me that night at the kitchen table with the trust papers open. You're going, he said. I'm going, I said. And I'm bringing the trust. The Grange hall smelled like coffee and wax and casseroles. I came in alone and sat near the back. The room shifted away from me in that tiny, ugly way crowds do when they think they already know the truth. After the blessing, Lila stood up with a stack of glossy pages. She spoke about Grandma Evelyn. About legacy. About family. About doing the right thing when circumstances change for some people. Her eyes drifted to the back of the room when she said it. Grant walked down the rows handing out the papers. I took one. It had a pretty photo of the oak trees and a title about preserving the Bennett family land. My name was nowhere on it. They had erased me from my own grandmother's story and printed it on glossy paper. The room made that warm sound people make when they think they are hearing something good. I could have stood right then. I could have held up the trust and the closing statement and ended it in 60 seconds. I did not. Because a scene in a Grange hall becomes gossip. A ruling in a courtroom becomes history. So I stayed in my chair. When Lila walked past me later, she leaned down and said softly, almost kindly, "You lost your own land, Nora. Let us have this one." I looked up at her. "Okay," I said. That one word made her face twitch. Relief and doubt fighting each other. I let her have both. The very next week, they filed in court. A process server I had known since Little League stood on my porch with an envelope and an apologetic face. Inside was a petition. My father and my sister were asking the court to remove me as trustee because my financial collapse made me unfit and put the trust at risk. There was a hearing date 3 weeks away. My name sat on the page beside the word unfit. I called Martin and read the whole thing to him. When I finished, he was silent. Then he said, "Oh. They really should not have done this." The next morning, I sat in his office again while he tapped the petition with one finger. "On the law, this is weak," he said. "Very weak. I can make a phone call and they will likely withdraw it." I waited, because I knew there was more. He looked up. "Or we let it go to hearing," he said. "We let them stand up in open court and say all of it. Then we put the trust and the real sale papers on the table and make a record that never goes away." I thought about the gas station. The rumors. The glossy pages. My mother's shaking hands. Which hurts them more? I asked. He almost smiled. "In a courtroom," he said, "with witnesses." "Then we wait," I said. Not everyone believed the easy story. On Thursday, an old woman named Martha Reed came up my driveway carrying a foil-covered plate like a weapon. She had helped care for Grandma near the end. She was 81 and scared of nobody. She put the plate on my counter and said, "I don't believe a word of it." "Which word?" I asked. "Any of it," she said. "Your grandmother gave you that land for a reason. And right now you look exactly like she did when she was letting a fool finish digging his own hole." I laughed, and somehow it came out close to tears. "Don't waste that now," she said. "You'll need it later." Then she told me a story about Grandma letting a developer believe he had won for a whole month before shutting him down in public with his own letter in her hand. "The trick," Martha said, "is to let them spend all their breath first." 2 days before the hearing, my mother came alone. She sat at my kitchen table with her coat still on and both hands wrapped around a cup. This time there was no honey in her voice. Only fear. "Your father is going to lose the house," she said. "If the venue dies, we lose everything. 50 years, Nora. The porch. The garden. The room you grew up in." Then she looked right at me. "Please," she said. "I am begging my own daughter. Let us sell your grandmother's land so we can keep ours." I reached out and held her shaking hands. "Mom," I said, "I love you. I'm not signing." She yanked her hands back. "You'd let us drown," she whispered. "Over dirt." "It's not dirt to me," I said. She did not hear me after that. People who are drowning do not hear the part about the rope. At the door she said, "I hope it's worth it." Then she left. The next day I drove out to the hollow and found Grant's truck backed up to the old barn. The doors were open. He was clearing it out. Grandma's cedar chest. Her tools. Her boxes. Her things. And when I looked at the gate, my breath stopped. The sign was gone. Bennett Hollow. Gone. Someone had pried it off and tossed it away like trash. I stood in that empty barn doorway and felt something colder than anger. They were not only trying to sell the land. They were erasing the woman who had loved it. That night, I sat on the dirt floor of that barn and almost broke. The hearing was 4 days away. The county believed I was the bad one. My mother had begged. My sister had cut me open. My grandmother's sign was in a ditch somewhere. For 10 minutes, maybe more, I let myself be nothing but a daughter who was hurting. Then headlights swept across the doorway. It was Ethan. He did not tell me to stand up. He did not tell me everything would be fine. He just came in, sat beside me on the cold floor in his good coat, and wrapped one arm around my shoulders. After a while he said, "I drove the county road." Then he reached behind him and set something gently between us. The sign. One corner was cracked, but it was whole. He had found it in the ditch. I put my hand flat on the faded green paint. "They threw her away," I whispered. "They did," he said. "And you brought her back." We sat there with that truth. Then I said, "I let this go too far." "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe you needed to see all the way to the bottom so you'd never wonder again." He squeezed my shoulder. "You're not wondering anymore, are you?" I looked at the cracked letters. "No," I said. "I'm not." That night we took the sign home and laid it on the kitchen table. Under the good light sat 4 things in a row. The sign. The trust. The petition. The closing statement for the farm. Ethan made midnight coffee and set a cup beside me. "3 weeks ago I told you to tell them you were broke," he said. "Now we know." "Yes," I said. "Now we know." He looked at me. "So decide. Not what's true. You know that already. Decide who you protect." I looked at Grandma's sign. "Tomorrow," I said, "we let the hearing happen." The courthouse hearing was on a Tuesday, exactly 3 weeks after I sold the farm. I wore a gray dress I usually saved for funerals. Martin met me on the courthouse steps with a leather folder under his arm. "Whatever they say," he told me, "you stay calm. You stay seated. You let the paper speak." My family sat on the right side of the room. My father in his good jacket. My mother staring at her hands. Lila upright and sharp, like she had already won. Grant beside a young city lawyer who kept checking his phone. And in the back row sat Martha Reed in her church coat, arms folded, looking ready to enjoy herself. The other lawyer spoke first. He said I had suffered a total financial collapse. He said my creditors could come after trust property. He said I was unfit to protect family assets. He said the word unfit twice. My father nodded along. Lila watched me the whole time, waiting for me to break. I did not. Then Martin stood. "Your Honor," he said, "we are not here to discuss feelings. We are here to read 3 documents." First he read the trust. The part where my grandmother ordered that the land be preserved, not sold, not divided, not used as collateral. Then he handed over the deed. "The land is owned by the trust," he said. "Not by the trustee personally. Not by the petitioners. And trust property does not become reachable simply because someone says the trustee is poor." Then he looked at the judge and said, "Poverty is not a breach of duty." A small sound moved through the courtroom. Almost a laugh. Then Martin turned to me with the smallest nod. The judge asked if I wanted to speak. I stood. Low voice. Steady. "There is one more document," I said. I handed it to the clerk. "This is the closing statement for the sale of my farm." It closed 3 weeks ago. The farm was not lost. The bank did not take it. I sold it intact to a land conservancy for $10.5 million. The room froze. I am not broke, I said. I never was. I told my family I had lost everything because my husband asked me to help test something he had suspected for 15 years. I could feel Ethan behind me without looking at him. What we found, I said, is in the petition now sitting in this court record. Within 12 hours of believing I had nothing left to give, my father and sister moved to take the one thing my grandmother trusted me to protect. My father made a sound. Lila half rose from her seat. That's not fair, she snapped. You lied to us. The judge said her name once. She kept going. You lost your own land, she shouted across the courtroom. You don't get to. I looked at her. I didn't go broke, Lila, I said quietly. I just stopped paying your bills. Silence. Real silence. The kind that lands hard. Then I turned back to the judge. I have paid the taxes on that land for 9 years out of my own pocket. I have never taken a dollar from the trust. The only people in this room trying to turn my grandmother's land into cash are sitting over there because their loan is in default. The young lawyer put a hand on Grant's arm. Too late. I am not unfit, I said. I am exactly what my grandmother named me to be. The person still standing when the offers came. Then I sat down. The judge asked the other lawyer one simple question. Is there any claim here that the trustee stole from the trust, wasted its assets, or mismanaged it? The lawyer swallowed. No, Your Honor. Then this petition fails, the judge said. Just like that. Dismissed. He also said something else. That filing a case this thin, built on claims that were not true, came dangerously close to the kind of thing a court could punish with fees. Martin did not ask for money after all. He told me later the warning did more damage than a bill ever could. But the most important thing came the next week. With the trust still in my hands and the court order behind me, I placed a permanent conservation easement on the hollow. Recorded at the county courthouse. Forever. That meant no one could ever sell it. Not me. Not Lila. Not my children. Not hers. Not anybody. The very thing my family tried to steal in a rush, I locked away slowly, carefully, and in writing. Grandma would have loved that. They caught me in the hallway after the hearing. Lila came first, eyes blazing. You made us look like criminals. No, I said. I let you look like what you chose to be. My father stood by the water fountain and would not meet my eyes. My mother opened her mouth, but I lifted my hand first. I'm not going to yell, I said. I'm too tired. The hollow is protected forever. Dad's loan is Dad's loan. I did not make it, and I am not paying it. And if any of you call me again, it had better not be about money, because I won't answer. Lila started to speak. You can be angry, I said. But you do not get to be confused. You knew who I was. You just thought I had stopped being her. Then I picked up my folder and walked away. Martha was waiting for me at the end of the hall with a smile so sharp it almost shined. That was the first time in my life I left the room first. Here is how the rest of it ended. The venue died that winter. My parents did not lose their house after all. My father sold the last of his equipment, and Lila and Grant sold the barn for much less than their dream had once been worth. Between them, they paid enough to keep the bank off the porch. They did it without me. It turned out they could. Ethan and I bought a smaller place at the edge of the valley. A farmhouse. 11 acres. Not what I had sold. Exactly what I wanted. That spring I planted 2 long rows of lavender, and the smell came back to my hands like it had never left. My family and I hardly speak now. My mother sends a Christmas card. I send one back. We built something quiet out of the wreckage. Not warm. Not close. but honest. And that is more than we ever had when we were pretending. There was one last thing I had to do. On a clear morning in May, I drove out to the hollow with Grandma's sign in the truck. Ethan had fixed the cracked corner over the winter and matched the faded green so well you would have to know where the damage had been to see it. I climbed the ladder. I hung Bennett Hollow back on its post. Then I stepped down and watched it move in the breeze off the creek. Grandma used to say land remembers who walked it. I think people do too. I think that place remembers her. I think it remembers me paying the taxes in silence. I think it remembers the lie that showed the truth. And the strange part is this. Knowing did not make me bitter. It made me light. I am not waiting anymore for my family to become the people I wanted them to be. I am just standing where my grandmother trusted me to stand. At the gate. In the lavender wind. With peace. Ethan came up the lane carrying 2 coffees, the way he does on every day that matters. He handed me one and looked up at the sign. Still crooked, he said. She'd like it that way, I said. We stood there together without saying much, because the quiet man and the woman who finally stopped paying for everyone had already said the only things that mattered. That is my story. A farm sold for more money than I ever dreamed. A lie that opened every locked door in my family. And 60 acres my grandmother loved, protected forever from the people who tried to take them. If this story made you think about a place, a promise, or a name on a deed you still need to protect, don't wait. Read the fine print. Lock the door that matters. And if this reminded you that walking away can be the strongest thing a woman ever does, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment, subscribe, and I will meet you at the next gate.